Today's texts are all about offending and being offended. And Paul warns us not to take offense over matters of indifference. It's neither commanded nor forbidden by God, then who are we to judge? So, for instance, if one person thinks that inner city crime can be helped with an educational tax incentive, and another thinks that inner city crime can be helped with greater entitlements, that's not a basis for offense. Both people want to solve the problem of inner city crime, they just differ on how. Then Jesus tells us in the Gospel according to Matthew that if you are offended for any reason, we should go to that offender privately and discuss it with him. So we don't go around and gossip with our friends and our neighbors about that person who offended us. We don't run about tattling to everyone we can find, including the pastor, hoping that we can get more people on our side. We deal with it privately. For as long as that person is willing to talk to us privately, we keep working on it. And if we cannot resolve it, then we eventually invite a couple of unbiased people to help us resolve it, or we tell it to the church. But please beware, because there is the striking possibility that you're wrong. So it might just be better to quietly forgive and ask forgiveness and move along. But today I want to talk specifically about our Old Testament text, about Joseph. Here is a situation that is not about religious pietism. It's not that Reuben wore his cowboy hat in church and someone got offended. It's not about hurt feelings. Levi didn't gossip about Benjamin's wife and get her all upset. Now this is a pretty clear-cut situation, don't you think? Joseph's brothers beat him up, threw him in a pit, and sold him to slave traders. I mean, I think everyone would agree that Joseph had a pretty fair right to be ticked off at his brothers. I mean, how do you handle that when someone has intentionally done something or said something intentionally to hurt you? I mean, you're not perfect, we all know that, but anyone can see in this case that you have been injured far beyond any kind of fair retribution. In other words, you couldn't have deserved what you got. You didn't deserve it in any way whatsoever, what was done to you. And you are so hurt by what has been done to you that you can't even find the wherewithal to confront the one who hurt you. And why bother, right? Because you already know he intended to hurt you. And if you did confront him, he could come up with all kinds of rational reasons and excuses and self-justifications for whatever he did. But how will his explanation help the hurt or help you heal? Really, it won't, will it? That's why it's so difficult to even address it. I mean, when we have been deeply hurt, there's a part of us that always wants to understand why. Why did this happen? Because we think, on some kind of level in our brains, we think that if we can just comprehend the exact reasons why this horrible thing had happened to us or was done to us, then you see, then it'll make sense. And then we can move on. But that never works. For one thing, you have to remember that truth that you learned on the playground in 4th grade. Some people are just mean. Sometimes people hurt us because they're mean. They're self-centered. They're indifferent to anyone else's pain. They are those broken, sad people that are like wounded animals, and they lash out at anyone on their path. Second, sometimes people hurt us because they're mentally unstable. My therapist once said to me, if crazy people made sane choices, guess what? They wouldn't be crazy. Sometimes we just have to know that mentally unstable people will make choices that hurt us because they're unable to do otherwise. They can't think beyond their immediate wants or their immediate desires. And finally, sometimes people are just blinded temporarily, blinded by their own wants and their own needs, and they just forget that anyone else lives in their world. They just forget and they live as though they're the center of the universe and everything revolves around them. And the bottom line of all this is that there is no real reason most of the time while someone hurts us. And secondly, even if we knew some real reason, it wouldn't really make us feel any better. And that kind of makes us angry too. In fact, sometimes we are the ones that end up in the vicious cycle of anger, and we begin lashing out at others like a wounded animal, just like that bully on the playground in 4th grade. But we don't have to stay that way. There's help for us. There is healing for us. And we find that healing in our relationship to God. We know that Paul promises that God will turn all things for our good over in Romans 8. Nice words. I like them. I say them often. But the cool thing about Genesis 50 is that we actually get to see it happen. We get to see Joseph being able to forgive his brothers because he has seen with his own eyes and reported to us that all the evil that they did, God used for his good. Why they did what they did doesn't even matter to Joseph, because God has already turned it all for his good. Now, of course, that required that Joseph have a strong relationship with God. And therein lies the real healing. See, as we grow in our relationship with God through the study of his word, through the reception of the Lord's Supper, our minds are transformed. They're healed. In understanding that vast gift of forgiveness that we have received, we grow to understand the depth of our potential to forgive. The depth of our ability to forgive. Unlike the unmerciful servant of whom Jesus speaks in the gospel, we know that we dare not be unforgiving to anyone for anything, because we have been forgiven so much. As we grow in our relationship to Christ, we gain the confidence that he leads us through every storm of life, and we always come out better. We always come out stronger on the other side. Like Joseph, we can not only forgive others, but we can rejoice in our own forgiveness from God, because regardless of what the wrongdoer meant, God has always and will always use it for our good and for the good of others. And when we can truly wrap our minds around that, we begin to realize that the Holy Spirit is constantly working within us, constantly performing those miracles of grace, constantly performing those miracles of forgiveness within us too. No soul can guess his grace till it become the place wherein the Holy Spirit makes his dwelling.